how we hold something in our minds, how much it affects what actually happens. There would be a magic that really cannot happen if you don't dare.
If I'm wanting to, but I'm doing a push-pull inside my own energy system, and that's going to keep me from having any momentum. Fear happens first, and then we attach meaning to it.
Well, hello, Katie.
Hello, Soph. Such a joy to see you.
Always, always such a joy. You know, I've gotten a lot of feedback that people listen to our show and how part of their joy is our joy to be with each other and how delicious that feels to just be in the presence of such joy. So,
I so appreciate that because I think that now we can do what I call osmosing. We can just slurp up if there's some quality that we're really enjoying, we can just have that and absorb that. So I love it that it's inspiring people in that way. Love it.
I love that. And it's to push it even a little further, I'm finding myself often during my day, and your energy is so smooth in mine in some ways that I will literally be like yesterday I was in a conversation and I was like, like what would be the angle that Katie has with that? You know, because we've had so many conversations now, and I feel like I can be you a little bit, so I can tap
You can
in.
be my AI.
I can. Ooh, I would like that. So, in the spirit of that, there was a conversation that came about, and I really very much was like, I really would love to hear what Katie would say to that. And it was about alignment and about how, so this person was describing to me that they want to do a shift with their career and they want to quit this one where she makes so much money to really do the, which is really soul crushing and wants to do this. And when she said that word, I was like, okay, let's immediately do the other conversation, which was what else is there. So she
Mhm.
describes to me this other thing. And then as she describing it, I said, do you view this as a potential career? And she said, no, I view it as a hobby. And it struck me that as she was saying hobby, there was no alignment for the world to give her this new possibility. Does that make sense?
And I'm not really committed to it. It's just a thing I do when I'm
Yes.
not engaged in the things I really like.
Yes, which is kind of crazy because in reality, that is what she loves. And the risk she's taking is staying in this soul crushing thing. Because if she was to make the switch and it's not a hobby and it's a real thing she's pursuing now, the risk is high because she's done this
Mhm.
career that she doesn't care about very much at all, I think she thinks as well. And so so really what the point was that I was going after was how we hold something in our minds, how much it affects what actually happens. Like I was imagining that she would be, if she were to treat it like she deserves to have it, or the world is, there for her to go after, she would sit next to the guy who would say, oh, if only I knew. Like there would be a magic that really cannot happen if you don't dare to
I
line
would
up
be
with it.
in the right place at the right time. So you're describing what Gay and I call third way, where it was when I'm aligned with life,
Yes.
I'm aligned in integrity, those kinds of things tend to happen. You know,
Yes.
and to sit next to somebody who opens the next door for something that I'm interested in, or, I'll sit next to somebody on a plane and we're going to the same conference suddenly from, different sides of the world. And that kind of magic really makes life uh, so much more interesting that not everything is predicted. But what I was getting from what you were saying was a push pull.
Yes.
If I'm not what I call committed, that means I'm all the way in.
Hmm.
I'm in the game, I'm in the pool, I've gotten off the bleachers. So if I'm wanting to, but I'm doing a push pull inside my own energy system, and that's going to keep me from having any momentum.
Yes.
And because one of the things that we say is that when you want to either solve a problem or open up to something new, the first thing is to commit. And that really means I'm all in. I'm taking my whole self and I'm aiming it in this direction. And it sounds like she hasn't done that yet.
No, and because of it, she keeps finding evidence that it is not lining up. And the feedback I was giving her or sharing with her was that it is because she's not committing, I didn't use that word, but like, truly stepping in it, then of course she's going to get evidence that it's not going to work because she's not there. She's not
Well,
in it.
she's getting evidence, it sounds to me, a mirror of what she's actually doing.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's what I tend to do when someone is in a decision making place is what are you actually experiencing, and are you taking your whole self into this decision, or what are you doing with it, energetically. And one of the things people do is a push pull, or they'll do a tiptoe, so they'll put a toe in and then they'll look around to see if anything happens from that toe. But the only thing that's going to happen from the toe is to the foot, but not to your whole self. And also, if you've got your toe out there but the rest of you isn't there, you're off balance. You're
Yes.
not aware of what else is going on. And so I really like to I ask myself a kind of a wonder question, like, do I really want to do this? And then I'll notice what my body says. Because so often we make these decisions from, is it logical? Does it make sense? And that's neglecting a very large part of our consciousness.
And, to tag along some things you and I have talked about before, which is at the heart of it, there's a fear that she may not succeed at this thing. And so if she gives her whole self to it, and now she cares, the fear is activated. But I was suggesting that because she's in fear, yeah, that's where you were going. Yeah.
Right. It's the cart before the horse issue.
Yes.
And what I was just thinking as you were saying this is fear happens first, and then we attach meaning to it.
Yes.
So we think, if I can just get rid of this fear of, that I'll be okay. But the fear is still going to be there. You're just going to find another thing to attach it to.
Yes.
So I'm afraid it's not going to work, or I'm afraid the economy is going to change, or I'm afraid that people are going to, think I'm a snob if I do. And it's the attaching of it that then justifies the fear. And so what I like to do is to go, oh, I'm scared right now, so I'm separate from what I'm actually engaging with. And so I'm going to do fear melters, or open my breath, or open my body until I'm feeling an experience of flow in me. And then I can consider the question, do I really want this? Does this look like the right direction? And the other thing about this push pull and not committing is that you can't have right timing. So if that readiness that I get, if I've moved from fear to presence, it allows me to respond much more in the moment. Because if I'm in fear, I'm always going to be behind. I'm going to be contracted away from. I'm not actually going to be able to respond. I'm going to be clunky and kind of, like a rock tumbler.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful because, well, first of all, she literally, as she got up from this call, she tripped and kind of almost made herself fall. So that's funny that you're saying clunky, because it was very much the vibe of the moment. I'm curious, like, what do you think? Like, I get that there's fear, and we've often talked about where does fear come from, but I'm curious, like, where do you think someone gets off on? Not because she kept saying about this is a big risk if I do it, and I kept saying it's a big risk if you don't, because if you don't, we also know that you're going to get sick from being. I mean, soul crushing is not a neutral word. It's a pretty, and so where do you think someone gets the value or the benefit from being kind of stuck in that limbo in between things like that?
Well, the first thing that comes to me is the safety of familiarity.
Yeah.
I know how to deal with, and I'm reacting to something I'm imagining acting on me. So I'm coming from victim. I'm coming from, I don't really have power here. And when I open up to declaring this is what I want, which comes from recognizing my own yeses and nos, really recognizing, do I deserve this? So there are a bunch of questions that come up, like, am I willing to step out into the unknown even though I don't know what the result will be? Or do I want to stay in what's known and it's soul crushing, but I can sort of, I can give myself some breaks from it, and I'll probably be able to last another 10 years before it just totally crushes me. So,
I
that
think the comfort of the known is that powerful that you, because she was seeing that the other one was soul crushing and the new possibility could not be. Yes, it could not succeed, but it certainly would bring her a lot of joy. So it's like, how could you sit? I mean, I guess I'm not wired like that. Like, how can you sit in between those two things and say, yes, I'm going to stay in this soul crushing thing?
well, I think that the next step would be to ask her and to help guide her or anyone to how am I experiencing this in my body right now? Because it sounds like she's still very much considering it in what I would call a head centric
Yes,
way
approach. Yeah.
of logic, and that's excluding her intuition, the things that she could be aware of if she were dropping into how she's experiencing it in her body. And I also, this would be a great way to bring it into action. So when she's at a stopping point, you could have her in a room and you could have her where she is now. Here's one direction that you could start in, and notice what happens to you as you start moving in that direction. And if you want to come back to home base, and then here's this other direction that's more predictable, and just notice what it's like if you continue down that path from your whole body experience. So I find involving my whole body, if I'm taking a journey, let my body take a journey and then give that attention to, oh, I just noticed I completely stopped breathing, or I tripped. I started to move in this direction and I tripped. I notice those things. Or if I'm starting to, I say yes to something and then the next thing I do is drop everything that I've been holding on to. I go, oh, maybe I'm getting some, mixed messages and my body's trying to tell me something.
It reminds me of this beautiful exercise I saw in some workshop many, many years ago where the facilitator was at point A and someone was representing point B as if it was, I'm on a plane. And so she's walking around to try to get to the destination on a plane, that's not physically a plane, but she's walking and she's moving around in such a way that she's pretty much never on course.
Right.
At some point she kind of pauses and asks the room, like, how am I doing towards my objective? And she's not facing it at all. And so the people are like, well, not at all. And she goes, oh, okay, well, so then I'll move. So listening to feedback was the point. It's like adjust to the feedback by what you described right now, by being in the room and walking towards the thing. How does
Yes.
it feel like? And then adjust based on that.
And I love what you're just saying is adjusting according to the feedback, because most of us adjust to feedback from out there.
Yes.
By what people say, how they look at us, where we are in line, how our various values are
Hierarchy of,
articulated.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
all of that, but how little training we get or experience about listening to feedback from inside.
Yes, and your way of doing it was exactly that. It's like start walking in this path that which you're also describing as soul crushing. So let's see what that feels like and let her. I think that's a beautiful way to do that. I think anyone could get up and go do it right now that they're
But
listening.
do it right now. And then also the thing I like to have people do is to exaggerate anything they're noticing, because usually those body signals, we don't listen to them. And so they go more underground. But if we invite them by exaggerating, so if there's a little cringe, just make the cringe bigger,
Mhm.
then it will set off all kinds of other connections in your brain and in your body brain. Go, oh, that was just like when I first went into that new school in the 8th grade and I felt so by myself and everybody looked like they were laughing at me. Oh, that's the same. I'm moving that whole frame. I'm putting that whole frame on what I'm doing now. So you get this information that you just from your insides that almost seems like magical. And it is kind of magical because we just don't spend much time there because we value much more. They must know what they're talking about rather than I must know what I'm actually feeling and what I'm actually experiencing. And I can use that as a guide as well as my friends or, my mentors.
I love that. In my work, I often refer to like school, and no criticism of teachers or anything. Of course, they have so many children to deal with, but to give us like one way to do things, and we all have to comply. It's noon. Now we eat. We go outside. Now we put a sweater. It's like, I'm
Well,
not.
not only that, but we have to line up. We have to
Yes,
take somebody's hand. We have to, you can't be by yourself, or you have to do so there's this cascade of rules,
yes, that come from
which
the outside that
from
we
the outside.
ignore.
And if we do that, we get some level of approval. We get some level of
Yes,
belonging.
yes,
We get some level of okay, I'm here, I'm doing okay. I haven't been kicked out. I haven't been
yes.
left behind. And we have that ancient, I mean, all of us inside have that ancient knowing. It's only been in the last 100 years or so that people have been able to continue being with their group or their tribe if they've gotten injured. Margaret Mead was once asked what she thought the beginning of civilization was, where people actually were creating civilization. And she said it's when they found a skeleton with a bone, a femur bone that had healed, that people had been, they'd broken their leg or broken their hip, and they hadn't just been abandoned, because at a certain point, like if you broke your leg or your femur, it was over,
Yeah,
and they,
yeah.
they would just leave you and move on. So the sense of I can be not perfect and in command all the time, and people will care for me. So that whole caring for others when they're not whole, she considered the beginning of civilization.
That's really incredible because in some ways what you're saying too is it came from the tribe. So there is some value in being in your tribe, but also the true wisdom and the true healing happened to the person and from within at the same time. It's like it's somehow finding this dance. I was quoting you this morning, talking about someone who said to me that the way that I spend time with her has helped her understand her value. She
Mm.
respects me so much that when I decided to spend time with the transition that she's in, that it really, and I remembered, it choked me a little, but I remembered one of the first time I met you, and that you introduced me to someone and you spoke of me. You saw who I was, that I knew maybe deep, 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 deep. But I was like, how did she see that? Like, I'm hiding it so well. Like, how could she possibly? And it was just this beautiful moment of being seen by your tribe, because
Yes.
I had that same, like I respected you so much, and I respect you so much, but the fact that you saw me that way was like she couldn't be lying to me. Like she's got to be true. So it's so the reflection of the healing that came from this moment of
Yes.
my tribe was pivotal in my evolution for
Oh,
sure.
I am so glad to hear that. And what I'm hearing is that when I when I can trust the feedback that
Mhm.
I'm asking for, and the way I know I can trust feedback is that that person that I'm asking for feedback from or getting feedback is in alignment. And what I mean by that is they live in integrity.
Mhm.
They do what they say they're going to do and don't do what they say they're not going to do. And they, all of the things that we have in our four pillars of integrity, but particularly speaking authentically, knowing how to take responsibility rather than blaming, and really coming from appreciation,
Mhm.
rather than comparison. And if I have a felt experience of that, I'm much more open mm, to valuing the feedback that's coming, and then valuing me
Mhm.
for pulling up feedback from that particular person whom I
Mhm.
so admire or trust.
Trust. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the other things, if I'm having an ambivalence, if I'm about a next step, it may be that what I'm going to be moving into doesn't have integrity, and my body is telling me that.
Ah.
So I would look at agreements. Do the people keep their agreements? If they say they're going to call you, did they call you when they said they were going to call you? It seems really simple, but it is like the baseline
Yeah.
for
Huh?
me. If someone keeps their agreements, I go, okay, let's take the next step. And then do they describe things in a way that's really accurate? Like, I was feeling pissed off, you made me feel like I didn't really matter. Okay, not in alignment.
Thank
But
you for self-selecting.
yeah, right. That if someone says, "Oh, when I met you, I felt myself hold my breath, and I realized, oh, I admire you so much that I just froze up, and I got scared. So I'm scared of your bigness." So if I hear, someone being authentic in the
Mhm.
moment, I immediately drop into trusting them.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. This weekend I did a little gathering with my girlfriends here, and we were talking about the year and what's to come and what are the beautiful things. And one of them spoke to being raised in an environment that was very polite, like very, you would never say anything. And I experienced her that way. Like if she doesn't come to something, she gives me this entire book about how the kid is da da da, and she had to do the thing. And then the phone call rang. And I'm like, just tell me that you don't want to come. It's totally, there's no need to do all this. And I spoke in response to that. I spoke that I was really committed to this radical honesty. And she looked at me and she said, "What is that?" And I said, "It's when you actually say what you think." And she looked so puzzled. She was like, "I don't even know that I know what I think. Like, I don't even know." Like, she's so used to giving you, what she thinks is the polite thing, And I feel like she would not have been in your room. She would have been like, "You're out." But in that moment, it was actually very beautiful because you could see there was a twinkle of like,
Mm.
and she's probably
Oh,
60 years old, she's not a young chicken, but she was very much like, "You mean I could actually say what I think?" And she was pondering. It was really beautiful because you could see she's probably going to do more of it.
well, you helped open a new possibility for her.
Hmm.
What I think of the value of authenticity is that it actually opens space for what's actually happening rather than the cross currents of I'm scared you don't like me, or this reminds me of, or this is how I handled it before, or I want your approval so much I'm not going to listen to me. And those cross currents get received by the other person is what I call static. It's like
Yes. Yeah.
you can't really find them, back behind the uh, the front that they're putting up. And I call this the effect of exogenous world. So exogenous means cause from without, and we get so many thousands of messages and rules about how we're supposed to be, and it's really to fit in.
Mhm.
And because if we don't fit in, going back to,
The
you broke
broken
your
leg, you out of the, yes,
you're out,
right.
you're gone. And we used to also control, I mean, humans used to control people's behavior with shame. It was
Hmm.
the same, like shunning, and I'm not going to speak to you if you behave that way.
Yeah.
Because with kids, go to your room until you can behave. And then, we have all of these rules about how you're supposed to behave with others. But authenticity just cuts through all of that,
Mm.
just with what's real in this moment. And my sense is that it just ignites vitality and it burns
Mhm.
away any of that, that little
The noise of
the
this
noise and the static
attic.
that most people live with.
That's funny because my father, who's no longer alive, but I have this memory of being at a dinner table, and there was maybe six people, and there was enough for three soups. Like there was not enough, there wasn't left a lot, and I really didn't want soup, and he really wanted soup, but he's so nice and whatever he's doing, like that thing where he's like, "No, no, you have the soup," and I'm like, "I
No, you
truly
could, you're
do
right.
not want the soup. I swear to you, I would say I want it if I wanted it." By the end of the thing, it's so exhausting. I remember eating the soup and being like, "All right, so now I'm eating the soup when I don't want one, and you don't have one when you really wanted one." Like, what was the point? What was the
Well, I think you've just described, I think, a common interaction for people on a daily basis.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Because first, if you don't know what you really want, and
Yes.
then you're not able to say and have received, really don't want soup today. I remember, when Gay and I eat very differently. And
Hmm.
uh, there was something where he'd say, "You're not eating this." And I'd say, "No, I'm not eating this. I made this for you. I'm having this." And there was this whole, like, is there something wrong with me? Or,
Wow.
And the whole idea that we could have different experiences,
Yes.
we could eat together, but we could eat different things. I'm sure you experience this on a regular basis. But
Deli, three
we're
times a week, a
sharing,
day.
yeah, we're sharing eating with another person, or with other people. And, that act of being true to yourself, I think really comes from first recognizing my inner yes and no.
Yes.
Yes, I really have to say, oh, this tastes good. Ooh, this tastes terrible. It's like
And to
another
be
person.
honest, to be one with what you experience.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And I've seen people they taste it, go, and then, try to cover
And
that
somehow they're like, oh, it's so good. And you
Oh,
sit
and
there,
then just go, "Oh," like, "Oh, thank you for the,"
thank you
it's
so
gonna
much.
leak
Yes.
out in some way that the other person is gonna receive, but you're also gonna receive it, and your insides are gonna go, "Oh, I'm not gonna share anything else because she's not paying any
She's
attention."
not listening. She's lying. She's
Yeah,
lying. I'm
she's
giving her
not.
this clear message and she's repeating it like on my behalf with a lie. That's a really beautiful. It's funny, I went to a party recently, and as you know, I don't eat onion and garlic and all the things. And this person had cooked very special things for me without any of it. And there was this little corner, there was actually a little sticker that said, Sophie's food.
It's
And it was
right.
incredible. And I felt really taken care of. At the
Yes.
same time, it was almost kind of like I felt like I had to eat a little bit. Like she made too much because she was not sure which one I'd like and all. And I felt like I didn't eat more than I needed, and I didn't apologize for it. But I felt the instinct of, oh, I don't want to make her feel bad because she went out of her way so much, to do all this. And it was a really, that's when I called my, inner authenticator or whatever, my inner truth, and said, and I ate what I want. I didn't even said, I'm not going to eat all of it. Like there was no reason for me to even say that, but the inkling was there.
That's so, you were just describing, I think, what many people experience many times during any given day,
Yeah.
but are not really able to give attention to it or think it's of value. So for me, underlying all of this is that we're taught that our own experience doesn't have value.
Yes. It doesn't matter. Yes.
Doesn't matter. I don't matter. My own, like, I don't want to, or I'm not cold, like, wear your coat. Well, but I'm not cold.
Yes.
The
Yes.
the world arguing, and then you learn to not trust your own experience
Mhm.
and to trust what's going on out there instead of your own experience. And to me, that is such a pivotal move to owning your own authority, your own agency, your own choices. Is this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And it just seems so fundamental because it is. But I think it applies to everything, including your client who is trying to decide what direction to go in her career.
Yes.
And it's all based on that fundamental, when I ask myself something and I get a message, do I listen and do
Yes.
I act on it?
Yes, and how loud does it have to get? Because sometimes they will be eventually there's a car accident or there is something that really is yelling at us that somehow people start to listen to. And maybe that be the blessing to all of us, is that we
I
listen as fast as possible and we catch it. It's not about perfection. It's not, because I felt
No.
the inkling was there for me, but the taking it back and being like, yeah, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to eat more than I want to please someone else. I mean, obviously that's how I got to my 350 X pounds, and I don't do that. I don't do that anymore.
And the fact that you don't do that and that you make that choice, even though sometimes the choice, has some complication to it, like
Yes.
your friends made all of this stuff for you and
Yes.
it's clearly caring for you. And so eating as a demonstration of caring, that was the pattern in my family. If I
Yeah.
didn't eat everything on my plate, it meant that my mother was a failure. I
Yes.
mean, basically, we went right to,
Yeah, so that
she's
you
a
didn't
bad
love her,
mother.
like you did it. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I'm responsible for her happiness by eating something that I don't want to eat.
I mean, that is so backwards. That is
It's
a little backwards.
so backwards, but it's, I think if it, anybody who's listening can, I think
Probably
particularly
relate.
women can relate, for something, or they, are you going to wear that, or what are you doing, or you can't use, when are you going to get, I mean, Gay's mother, or, after many books would still ask him when he was going to get a real job,
Oh my God.
and, so that the
Oh,
validation or not that we get from out there in the world, I think runs so many people. And then it would be like sitting in the middle of a cave that you've put yourself in, where there are no resources, but you're really safe. Nobody can get you because you're way back in there.
and then you don't have a life. You're living in a
No,
cave.
you don't have a
Like,
life, but
no.
you're following orders. And
Oh,
you
well,
know,
maybe as we wrapping up this episode, I really love you give a lot of very specific tips, and I'm certainly for myself, I'm going to go. There's a decision I need to make that's a little unclear, and although as you were talking, I think it became clear as a matter of fact, but I'm still going to do the exercise. I want to go in the middle of the room and walk towards each one and see how my body responds. I think that was a very beautiful, beautiful idea.
oh, thank you. And I've done this with people many, many, many times. And then what they learn is more how to listen to themselves,
Yes.
because whatever comes up is a message of some kind. And so you can assist them to help beginning interpreting that. Because if you've overridden listening for a long time, it's going to take some practice. That's
It's
the
a
only
little
thing I'm going to,
quieter. Yeah, yeah.
it'll be quieter. You might be a little confused. It might be fun to have a friend or an advocate as you're learning, so you're not trying to do it all on your by yourself. But I found it to be incredibly practical, because I'm making what's going on in my mind real.
Yes, I'm giving it
And
I'm giving it mass material.
yes, and form and creative form. And so I could do it by walking, I could do it by drawing, I could do it by singing, but I'm making it real with my body. And then you become your own advocate and your own guide. And it's not to say that you ignore other people, but it's so imbalanced. It's been so, do what they want, not what you want.
Right.
And so, and advocating for little people, I always am looking like, what is it that you would want? Where do you
Yes.
want to sit? Are you
Yes.
ready to eat? Is this enough? What would you like to eat? So that they're making choices and
They
I'm
matter.
honoring those.
That's beautiful. Wow. Whew, thank you. I feel like all shivery in a good way. Like,
Oh, good. Oh, good. The journey of, as we're entering and continuing in this new year.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.